All right, we are live and ready to go. So, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We're excited to have you join this edition of Actionable Innovations Global. We've been hosting lots of different live interviews and presentations throughout the year. We have these available to you asynchronously as well. So, if you know someone who didn't get to see the live event, make sure they join and see it asynchronously. I know it's early on the West Coast in the US. Lucy's here in the background, but it's early where she is in Oregon, and Manoj and I are here. Manoj is in the UK, and he's in the mid-afternoon, so he's ready to wind down his day, and I have my cup of tea to start my day. So everyone's at different places, but glad you could join us. Actionable Innovations Global is a professional learning community that includes all kinds of educators, leaders, researchers, teachers, and practitioners interested in teaching and learning with diverse, connected, sustainable, creative, and significant learning for everyone. So we're super excited you're here to join us. That's what we do. We like to connect and empower like-focused educators who are really doing innovative things. And that's probably you. So join us anytime if you'd like to have the opportunity to share and talk about what you're doing in your part of the world. Please let us know. But we love emerging technologies and tools, and we love education for a purpose to make a difference. And we have an event coming up on August 7th we're super excited about. And this has to do with I'm thinking artificial intelligence, like hello. I told you it was early and heavy by tea. Generative AI, ChatGPT, all these things that are changing our world today because everything's changing so quickly. We've been doing this. I know that ChatGPT came out in March of 2023, and it's rapidly changing and evolving. Everything is just growing at the speed of light because no longer is it just ChatGPT, it's built into every tool. And as we prepare for the future with our kids and starting our new year, we really want to be ready to go with it because it's something that's going to be in their lives. It's something that's important for digital literacy. It's important for us to understand it as educators and to be ready to put up those guardrails or those bumpers in the bowling alley to keep the lanes where the ball stays in the middle and protect them and guide them as they use these new technologies and looking at ways to use them for good. Manoj and I have even talked about how AI is being used in Nepal, in some of the remote regions. So it's a hot topic. You have a 30% discount through August 1st. So follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, all these different things, YouTube. We have all kinds of groups where you can see what we've been doing. You can catch up on recordings we've already had. There's some amazing ones there with amazing educators. And then also today, you can introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you are. Tell us what you do. Add your Twitter handles. Add your LinkedIn profile URL. Anything you want to. And feel free to tweet out to us with us as well. So your hashtag is actionable inno, just not innovations, actionable inno. And go on and hashtag that as well if you're tweeting. So I'm so excited for you to meet my dear friend, Manoj Gautam. He's actually in UK right now. He's from Nepal. And he started the Schools for Sustainable Development Goals. And we're going to be talking about those today. So he is the founder of these. He has done incredible work for years, doing a lot of different initiatives he's going to talk about. And we are having him speak today. So here are those slides while I was busy talking and didn't advance. But there they are now. And there's Manoj, and you see him live on camera as well. So here we are today. I'm excited to finally be hosting this event with you. He is an amazing conservationist. He's a humanitarian. He's an author. He's done it all. You can catch him on documentaries. You can see what he's written. He will tell you about his background. I'd love to start talking and share it, but I'll let him tell you. And I guess you can tell who he's with right here. We have a mutual dear friend who's been a guide and a mentor to us, and that's Dr. Jane Goodall. So he'll talk about that. I will tell you that he won the Youth Leadership Award from the Jane Goodall Institute, which made me super excited. He came and stayed with us for a while and taught at our school, and I was so excited when he did that. He founded the Jane Goodall Institute in Nepal. He's gone to Oxford. He believes in animal welfare. He's worked hard with that. He also believes in conservation efforts and community support. And those are kind of the three pillars of Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots. Care and concern for animals, people, and the environment. So that's a little bit of what what he's always believed in with even before Jane, but Jane helped solidify his passion for that. And now he's taken that and even grown it even more. So I will tell you how I first met him. We were on the listserv for Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots because I had students who we were traveling to different parts of the world, working with Jane in different parts of the U.S., but also went to Tanzania twice with students. And he had written on the listserv, and I thought he was some old man writing to me. He was like 17. So he was just a young teenager, 17 or older teenager. And he had collected images and videos on child slave labor in Nepal and didn't know exactly how to fine tune it to finish it. So my students, three of my students, Charlie Crawford, Grace Askew, and Alex Harkis, all finished the video. Innocence Lost, Child Labor in Nepal. And we were just laughing a minute ago because it's still a really powerful video, but it's not 4K because it's several years ago. So it's quite pixelated, but you'd still enjoy it. It's on YouTube, and we'll give you the link for that. But it's really interesting, and it tied right into our curricular studies in history, with world history and child slave labor and in England and in the UK in the 1800s. And then you can ask students today, is there still child slave labor? And you'll get some really interesting response. And the answer is yes, there is everywhere in the world. So that actually went on to be shown at a peace conference for the UN. Dr. Jane saw it. Apple promoted it on their website for years. So that little video that started with that one little Roots and Shoots listserv message became globally known. And that's, if you follow your passion and just keep your eyes open and take those opportunities, things can happen, and it just shows you. So I'm going to really, that's all I'm going to tell you about Manoj right now, because I want him to share his story. You didn't come to hear from me, you came to hear from Manoj. So Manoj, why don't you start telling us a little bit about your background and about your story?
Thank you very much, Julian, for having me here today. Like you mentioned earlier, I originally come from Nepal. I was born and raised in a rural western part of the country. Later, which became known for being a Maoist insurgency hotbed, which affected all our lives. But this is pre-Maoist insurgency time, when I was growing up out in the very open, nature, where life was very much in tune with nature. People's life was simpler back then. But one thing I was noticing was things were changing around me, in my surrounding, the vegetation, the rivers, the composition of biotic factors, like animals, wildlife, birds, and so on and so forth. And that used to bother me a lot. So early on, I kind of, started channelizing my interest and my passion for animals and the surrounding environment by just taking, little actions, very, small individual actions, from rescuing snakes to rescuing birds, doing this, that. And early on, I was introduced through books donated to a charity school that my father was running in the village. There was a New York-based, book donating agency that had, sent some books, and in one of the books, Jane Goodall, Dr. Jane, was featured. And back in those days, we didn't have any television, so no, interesting nature-related, channels or programs. So books were, like a matter of fascination, and that was my first exposure to the idea. Reading about Jane Goodall, that was just one-page chapter, on Jane Goodall and what she does. That was like the first validation to my idea about what I wanted in life. Not that I, quite understood, the scale and the scope of what Dr. Jane Goodall represented, but it kind of, gave me the golden stamp for my own dream that it is not crazy, and it is a valid thing to dream about, spending a life working with and for animals. And then, like I kind of started chasing Dr. Jane with all the means possible. And one thing led to another. I started a little group at my school when I was not even a senior student. Started, like kind of galvanizing a small movement with my peers and my, fellow classmates. Then I got the membership of Jane Goodall, Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots in 2002. And became friends with Jane. 2005, we hosted Jane. So, one thing just led to another. And then the Roots and Shoots was something that kind of opened my eyes about the importance of education, regardless of what it is that you do that the world needs, preparing the next generations people. And also the zeal within me, I think, was nurtured with the realization that I probably didn't have all the like the right kind of tools, exposure, guidance, because most of the times I was fighting. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, like everybody's dad. It was either doctor, pilot, or engineer, in our society. So like I had to fight rather than my passion being nurtured. So I wanted to give that opportunity to lots of other kids, and through Roots and Suits that was possible. And my job was to basically reach out to different communities, to different schools, basically give ideas to young chaps, groups, about what they could do. Just look around, whatever bothers you, whatever you feel like is not right, make it your own project, take it in your own hands. And since then, I've seen like firsthand, personally, that children are and young generation people are not to be taken lightly. There's so much potential in them. There's so much that they can do, not only for the future, preparation for the future, but also then and there. Like there's so much that they can establish as a story, as a inspiration, as an inspiration to others, so on and so forth. So that all basically solidified with all the things that I was doing in the front of conservation. And I've basically been jack of all trades. I've done field conservation, field research, more biological things. But later on, I started working with people, because at the end of the day, like one of the godfathers of experiential learning, John Dewey, has eloquently put, everything happens in a social context, basically. So I could see that unless and until you work with people, there isn't much you're gonna achieve if you just start working in the jungle itself. And hence the realization for the bigger need of galvanizing a larger momentum and movement, but also keeping things in long-term vision as well, which is why I started working with lots of young people, integrating from communities and from schools. Many kids I used to work with did not even have access to schools. So yeah, that's like my background a little bit. Then I have again, like in the context of working with different communities, some overly privileged and others extremely underprivileged communities. Working in a range of different kind of population or denizens groups. I just started seeing how the fundamental necessity that urges us to, be the player in the field of conservation, say, for example, was that we have to create opportunities. We have to be able to link, these values that we strive for with something that can become a safety net, for the very dirt poor, at the brink of all the issues that are now represented by larger umbrella of sustainable development goals, which is why when sustainable development goals was introduced as the newer, much fresher and much more inclusive version of what used to be Millennium Development Goal, which was a little more linear, but then kudos to UN, the team who came up with this idea that's very inclusive, from minimizing poverty to long-term sustainability of the nature, keeping in mind land and life, land under like life underwater, and like all this basically. So this is something that I found you have to consider, because things are not linear, especially on a societal front, on a community level. Things are very much entwined, and then that's why there's this need for integration. So you see, like my upbringing, my slow growth basically prepared me to be able to be able to see the relation, the link, and the need to integrate all different aspects of life, all different aspects of today's world need. All the challenges and opportunities that there are, from traditional practices to very new cutting edge technology. Like basically the link is what I kind of slowly grew as, being the link to international community versus local community, ancient versus very new, high tech, cutting edge things. And there's so much relevance in all that. So that is what I do now. I'm a hardcore conservation guy, but at the same time I also work in the field of creating opportunities for the local community who are at the forefront of conservation in Nepal. Nepal has always been, for the past many decades now, has been a leader pretty much, despite being one of the poorest nations. It has shown, amazing level of commitment for conservation. We have set aside more than 23% of the land mass as protected area, absolutely non-exploitable for commercial purpose. And then on top of that, it's 15% community forestry, which is a huge success story of community initiative. But the local people have not been rewarded. The world needs to know about this, because with idea of conservation and environment, we are connected. What happens in the global level, there are consequences for Nepal, especially our third pole, Himalayas, as we know. There are some severe, repercussions of climate change and global warming that we're seeing in our part of the world, and South Asia being the most heavily populated place in the world. We have more than almost 30% of the total global population just basically concentrated in one little unit of 3.4% of land mass. So 3.4% land mass holds almost 30% of the global population, and there's a sheer pressure on the natural resources and this and that. So again, the idea is to find out sustainable solution, sustainable opportunities for the local people who have given their blood and sweat, for conservation, which is now continuing. But we fear that there might be a little fatigue that the local community might get hit with. So that is one thing that I do, trying to combine meaningful traveling, meaningful like conservation oriented tourism, conservation of course, and then the education, preparing the global new generation.
Yeah, Manoj, if I can step in for a second, I do want you to talk more about what your opportunities are. I do want to share a little bit about the SDGs, because it's interesting in so many parts of the world. This is a huge focus in education, the Sustainable Development Goals. And yet, if you're in the United States or parts of North America, many schools, many teachers, many educators aren't aware of them. And as Manoj said, I think it's so important. And the really interesting conversation we were having earlier is that they're so easy to integrate. I mean, so much of what you're doing in all different curricular areas could easily address any of these sustainable development goals. And like he said, it's not linear. Often it's addressing 2 or 3 of them at once. So if you're not familiar with them, I recommend that you look at them and consider them as a framework for global education and global competencies. This is a very flat world anymore. We're all so connected. We're talking to Manoj in Nepal. Lucy's with us also, and she's in Portland. I'm here. We have Ian from Norway who's joined us. We're all in a different place, and yet we can all connect instantly, and we can travel so easily. And the other point you made too, because I've done so much work, you and I have both talked about deforestation and the effects of logging and different things in Tanzania and Kilimanjaro and the ice melt. And then you look at what's happening with my work with the polar bears and the polar ice caps and things that are happening there. And we're seeing so many extreme weather events that are affected by climate change. So, that's one of these goals as well. And the part I think that is so important about Manoj and his work is his involvement with the community. That it's not us coming in or anyone coming in and saying, this is what you need to do, but having them be a part of the community decisions and the protection for the community, and anything that's done there is really vetted, like in a Shark Tank kind of thing. Like my grandkids were at the lake with them, and every night they have to watch Shark Tank and see what the newest thing is. Well, they're doing these pitches, and so it's the same kind of thing. You come up with ideas, but you must have the community buy-in and support for them to be successful. And even though you may have all these great ideas, they need to be action-oriented. So we can study them, we can talk about them, but what can we actually do about them? And another thing you said, Manoj, is, small steps. If we all do one small thing, it makes a big difference. So I just wanted you to know that these resources are all available from the UN. They're amazing for global competencies and issues, easy to integrate. And lots of schools are actually using this as the basis for a lot of their curricular initiatives. So I absolutely recommend that. And Manoj is very humble. He's done a lot of work in Nepal and other places, because I don't remember what you call it, like the Buzzard Cafe or restaurant or something. He's worked where the buzzards were dying from, I think they were buzzards, but dying from
Yeah, vultures.
Poisons in different areas. So he would feed them safe food. Poisoning fish in the rivers to try and get them quickly was also putting poison into the system of the river and humans who ate them. Animal sacrifices that were religious, trying to cut back on those because was it 50,000 animals? Some huge amount of animals were being slaughtered every year for religious purposes. So he's done a lot of work. He's working. I know the BBC was there recently filming about the different animals, tigers and things in Nepal, and the way they've been able to grow their population. So he's being quite humble, but he's done some amazing work. He also has an amazing background in his education, academics, so Oxford and different places. So you can look at that as his bio. But I just wanted to share those little things. And the last thing before I let him continue is it's so important to have these kind of action, challenge-based learning, project-based learning, problem-based learning approaches. That he used the word relevant. Kids want to learn things that are relevant. They want to be authentic learning that makes a difference. And so these are opportunities to do those experiential types of things that are really relevant and getting kids engaged. And I know it made a huge difference to our students. We sent computers and library books to Tanzania. We sent school supplies for the children living in the slums in Nepal. So these little things can make a huge difference and empower our students to see that what they do really can have a global impact. And their ideas will be much more profound than any of ours are. So that's enough bragging about Manoj, but he won't brag for himself, so I'll brag for him. But really empowering our youth to have student agency and make a difference is important. And so he shared his background, and now I know he wants to talk to you about all these great opportunities he has. I'd like to know first, why did you think education was so important? You kind of shifted, and you alluded to this, but already. But he shifted from like ecotourism, and here's what's happening, to education. And when he talks education, it's not just students. It can be students and teachers. It can be just faculty or higher ed. It doesn't have to be younger students. It can be higher ed. But why did you kind of shift in your focus to be really education focused?
Well, again, the way I see, because in my work life, I have facilitated as a consultant on the ground for so many different agencies, from development agencies, big organizations, doing conservation work, or anything that basically requires the work, pulls the work in the very locally specific community context or the social context. And that's where I have seen even well-known, renowned, celebrated experts of their own subjects. There's some kind of limitation in how much they could have achieved, or how efficient they could have been in the ground, simply because they haven't had that real life experience. On the ground in that social context is a little different than playing playing with academia. And we live in this world where information and intellectual engagement is so easy. Information is everywhere. You just basically sit with a laptop, and kids have access to anything. Teachers have access to anything in the world. It's so easy. We're overloaded with information. But then at the same time, there's I wouldn't say no, but the more time all this information loading takes away from us, there's little time for real practice, like apprenticeship, for example. I mean, take the earning side from the definition of apprenticeship. There's a reason why apprenticeship is one of the best learning, especially talking about one particular set of skills or something like that, in terms of in the quest of specializing. It's one of the best ways of learning, because unless and until you've done it yourself, just the theory and this and that, doesn't really cut it. So I've seen this limitation among amazingly brilliant minds, but they struggle, down at the ground. So I just thought it needs some kind of bridging. There's this gap. So before the education system, our current global education system, it just moves on with the routine from K to 12, and then undergrad and masters, PhDs, DPhils. we are, like the entire thing seems to be in a rush of some kind, right? It's age specific as well, not restricted to, but mostly, like it's a mass production of educated, like population that we, want to fit into different slots like box and pegs. So where I see this gap is if we could design or devise something that already kind of sensitizes if it needs sensitizing, desensitization if it needs desensitization to the new generation chaps, before they are fixated in certain ways, like make them aware about certain challenges. I think it's we are a little too overprotective about certain things, and then we're little too, a little less protective about many other things that we maybe need to be protective about. But let them, let them see the real world and get frustrated, even if they, if that's part of learning. Let them have that real, life experience. That is why I kind of, inclined towards this, because it's a long-term thing, and the global education needs to be more relevant to towards the global needs. The world needs many things. There are so many crises that we deal with on a daily basis, and our brilliant minds are there, but they are kind of fixated in certain ways. And maybe it's because somewhere we have lagged, or we have not been very insightful in preparing our next generation of elite citizens, the brilliant minds of our world, which they are in their own respective fields, but connecting that to the real world, to the needs of the real world, that needs to begin a little early. And if we could achieve that, I see humanity doing brilliantly. So and again, like my passion, that is conservation included, we could achieve so much more, on that, because I see like what little resource can do in our community. For example, you just mentioned some book donations in Africa and here and there, and I got to learn about Dr. Jane Goodall, which entirely changed my life as well, which was made possible because of making some resource available in our part of the world. Because kids in our part of the world, even like till now, from my days, not much has changed in many parts of my country. They live in the real world. They live in the real world, so that side of it, things are covered for them. But then the resources like books, other kind of materials, like access to those things, can make a huge difference for them. Whereas the students in the first world, students in the in the more advanced societies, if I can use that without some sounding politically incorrect, they could do with some exposure to the real world, and then put their hands into some projects, like you talked about project based learning. I mean, we keep talking about experiential learning. What else is experiential learning, other than uh, you know basically giving them opportunity to face a problem, a challenge, and then instigate them to learn more about how they could play a role in actually fixing that. So then the real uh, context, they can establish themselves. That is the agency of students, as I see. Like rather than being imposed with ideas about how the world needs to be and how they need to prepare for this and that. Like I'm a father, of two kids. My son, he is a challenging kid. Like so this is my own personal experience as well. How do I instigate him to go to school, to be part of the education that he's privileged to get. But at the same time, he struggles to see the relevance of like much of the things that he's provided with at his school. Maths, he just doesn't get the relevance of maths. For example, what is the use in the real world? And he has seen both the worlds. Partly grew up in Nepal. Now he's going to school here in the UK. He's 10 years old. But the kind of questions he asks me, so these are like real experiences I've tried to integrate in my line of work, which is why I've gone more and more, inclined towards playing within the realm of making education more relevant, more student agency based, and already doing something, bringing some contribution on the communal level or on the ground level, made possible by schools and by students and by teachers.
And
And,
it's
and
amazing what they come up with, isn't it, Manoj? Like the ideas they come up with are incredible. And I will say, for some of you educators who might be listening, you're like, wow, this sounds all great, but I live in wherever I live in a small community, and I can't imagine going into Nepal. yes, and there are opportunities to get there. But the other thing is start local. Let your kids design the type of activities they want to do. If you come up with the idea, they're not going to buy in as well. It's like, what problems do you see in our school, in our community, in our city, in our region, in our state, in our country? And start local and then grow it slowly. But let them be their ideas and let them brainstorm ideas. And then when you're ready, you jump to global. So don't always feel like this is just too much to go straight to global. Yes, and that's important. And one thing I loved that you said to me recently that I actually used it as to when I talked about it, Manoj, and you probably didn't realize I thought about it a lot, but we're always talking about let's have our kids make a difference for the world of tomorrow, but why are we waiting till tomorrow? Why don't we just do it today? I had that on mute. I'm sorry. I thought I had unmuted. But why are we waiting for tomorrow? Why can't the kids start making a difference today? And you said that to me, Manoj, and I really thought about that. And I said, yeah, we need to quit saying like it's their world for tomorrow. It's their world today. So I really thought that was powerful and impactful as well. So let the kids, design some of these things. But then Manoj has also provided some amazing opportunities. I put up here Bardi in Nepal so he can talk about where that is. He knows a lot about that place. And he can share that. He has that and different opportunities as well. And you don't have to jump right to this, Manoj, but it's ready when you are.
I totally agree with you, Julian, when you said, like start local. You start small. The beauty of local, small, simple is that it is comprehensible, and comprehensibility. I work with the students a lot, and I see that everybody's looking fancy. Everybody's looking exotic, like looking for something fancy, something exotic, something, like otherwise, because there are too many stimuli in our world, like every single thing is, like now the entire generation has become like unexcitable pretty much because they've seen it all, like in their head, they know it all because they've done this, they've done that, simulation. And, like I said, you just sit in a screen and everything is there. And that just gives them this it's almost a misapprehension of some sort that they know what it is, but unless it's like reading theory on football and going to a football pitch. you're not ready for that.
Right.
So that thing can start early on, and easiest thing is to start very local. And talking about simplicity, that is why I love Bardia, this place, where again this is a national park, vicinity where we work. And it's a really interesting place because it sits in a very interesting temporal juncture where it's kind of coming out from its old skin, covered with traditionality and like ancient practices and so on and so forth, many of which need to change, are like basically like now absolutely unfit for this time and world. So they need to shed that, but again, they are quite endpoint with like so many different things. It's not always easy to get rid of that, but slowly it's trying to emerge out of that. And there are many other traditional or ancient wisdom related things that are very valuable, that are in the brink of basically just disappearing from slipping out of our hands, that need preservation, whether it's cultural or environmental, and that hence the urgency for the conservation work.
That's so important that what you just said, Manoj. I have to jump in because, and I was noticing some of the chats as well. So Ian was talking about one of the people from Norway who's joined us, Ian Naismith. He lived and stayed in Nepal for 10 months in an international studies program with the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1983 and 84. And he was talking also that it's so different when you're there. And if you've never traveled much globally or been to these types of places, whether it's Tanzania, Malawi, Nepal, or anywhere, he said it's worlds apart from the West and our cultures here. You see that on the screen. It is, and I love that it's simple. I mean, when you go and you're back and you're in there, you start questioning even some of the things we're doing in the more advanced world. Advanced in quotes, technologically advanced maybe, but simple pleasures, simple things like having tea when you go to first visit a school, and getting to know each other and building those relationships. So I think it is. I mean, that's another way for global competence to build it and to be better understand it is to travel if you can and be exposed to these different cultures. But preserving those stories and the traditions is always so important and such a balance when you're over there because you want them to be able to engage in the modern world and what the modern workforce looks like and be prepared for careers. And yet you want to preserve their cultures and traditions. So it's always a balance with that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is what adds another layer of challenge because in one hand you're talking about preserving what's ancient, old, like has worked for centuries, but because of this rampaging modernization, things are changing and we're losing it in an unprecedented dramatic rate. While at the same time there are many other things unacceptable for today's time, like gender issues, taboos, menstruation related things that hinders like girl growth and empowerment, like little things but very important things that we need to get done with, like these are
And even gender equity in education is important.
absolutely, absolutely, and so much more, like it just basically sits in layers and layers and layers. So while you're trying to get done with like many of these things from the dark ages, there are many beautiful things that we need to preserve for the sake of humanity, and that kind of brings some kind of contradiction and adds a challenge, but also that's why things are interesting. And the reason I was talking about Berdia here is, I mean, we've got the last remaining population of wild Asiatic elephants. We've almost increased the number of tigers since 2009 sevenfold. That was the recent census in 2022. So like unprecedented success in terms of tiger population revival. And then we've got one-horned rhinos. We've got gharial crocodile, which is very endemic to our part of the world. So like it's very interesting place in itself. But the reason I was mentioning this is when things are different, like when you're trying to engage your kids or students, teachers alike in your own community, like I said, like today's generation needs some kind of like real deal, stimulus. And when things are starkly different, that's when many, like this is my personal experience I found with engaging with many international, school groups who have visited Nepal, that there's something about Nepal that really hits them. It's so different. Like our friend Ian rightfully mentioned earlier, it's world apart. It's very different, and that difference works magic. But also that things are so simple. Like because if you talk about sustainable development goals, these are block ideas, super comprehensive, ideas that becomes a challenge in comprehensibility, because if you cannot break down, and again, like I said earlier, you cannot relate to on an individual or little communal life form, then it's too big. It just basically goes like that, from a growing mind. But in Nepal, in Berdia, a community like Berdia, you can see everything. You can see the health related issues literally right in front of your eyes. Nothing, there's no veils, there's no curtains there. Everything is right there, and the happiness is there. Like, so the idea of gross national happiness. What are the values? That the thing that I mentioned, that something like Millennium Development Goals could not see back then. You see the positive and negative all in one small place, so you see everything connected. Then you understand very simply. You don't even have to talk much about it. uh, Young chaps, 14, 15 years age, they get to see it and they understand how everything is interconnected, and they understand the need of the approach and intervention to be integrated as well. And that is what I think is the best thing about this place, that comprehensible. It makes all the concepts that otherwise we struggle so hard in our classrooms to make our students understand and feel and realize, and hence get inspired to do something about it. You don't have to do anything. You just let them go. The bonding becomes a very natural thing. We see, like, when the students come, there's high school seniors, when they first come, with their earpods in their, like very indifferent looking attitude, that everybody's trying to play cool. By the fourth day, like in the evening, we sit right next to the campfire and just, like we do these reflections every single evening. And they are just like, these cool dudes are basically just teary eyed, all of a sudden, on what they did or what they heard about what they learned. So like there's some kind of magic, which is why, and I've seen it over generations now, since 2009 to now, and I just want this to be systematically brought to education system. Like this needs to be adopted within the larger framework of sustainable development goals that become comprehensible with these kind of experiences. And I just could not do this, knowing that there's this magic thing right here that does magic. So many that I've observed. So yeah, that is why we created schools for sustainable development goals. That is the idea.
I have a question from Ian, and Carrie, I'm going to address your comment and Lucy's as well in a minute. But Ian also said governance is a worldwide, ever-changing issue for nations and countries. How do you see governance in Nepal these days?
Well, Nepal sits in a very, very critical. Has gone through so many junctures. Like we've seen major political and governance-related changes. We've seen changing systems from monarchy, like absolute monarchy, to constitutional monarchy, to people's democracy, and now republic. We've also gone through a horrible civil war, families torn apart, thousands, people basically perished and got displaced, and so on and so forth. And now, after all this, the governance is, of course, the time has done its thing. Things are very different. Nepal is a very different country than what Ian saw back in 83, 84. That was a year before I was born. So it has come a long way, but at the same time, the governance style pretty much is same. One thing that has changed for real betterment, I see, is perspectives. Like this, again, mingling of different minds, this access to the outer world, people coming, people going out, coming back again. This kind of interaction that Nepal has made possible largely by internet, together with all the other like not so desirable things that comes with the internet access and things like that. I think the new generation is much more like coming with an optimism. Like the narratives that they are playing with, the ideas that they're playing with, the challenging, even the manner they challenge the governance, the existing governance system, the caveats in the governance system, the basis for failure that we've seen over decades and decades and decades. Like Nepal has been a very interesting playground for foreign aid, games as well. And we've seen so many things, like millions of dollars is spent, and still nothing happens. So Nepal sits in a very interesting curve. It's constantly changing, but in totality, not much has changed. It's the same bureaucracy, very lethargic, very uninterested, unexcitable. For new things, kind of bureaucracy. Everybody's trying to save the head. From possible consequences. Not doing anything, basically is not punished, and trying to do something good might actually come with some consequences. So it's a very fear-laden, kind of bureaucratic regime. And then political instability is a huge thing. But the newer entrepreneurship, platforms are being created. So there's, we sit in a very interesting governance-related temporal juncture as well.
Well, having said that, and talking about some of the disruptions that have been happening, is this a safe place to travel, right? You bring students?
Absolutely. Nepal is one of the safest countries. I mean, I travel quite a lot myself. Been to, I keep traveling to many Asian countries, Africa, and if you compare Nepal with many other countries in Latin America and Africa, and like other underdeveloped countries, Nepal is undoubtedly one of the safest countries. People are very helpful. Crime rates are very low, and the general sense of hospitality is very heightened. Like people are very, very, very hospitable towards foreigners, especially, and especially Berdia, which is also kind of like it's not like already like mass tourism site, but it is like selective, meaningful tourism, nature-based tourism kind of area. So people know a little how to be hospitable and all that in the modern sense, but culturally as well, they're very, very hospitable people. So Nepal is despite the political instability that we've seen in the past. Things are much more stable now. Nepal, even during the insurgency time, for foreigners it wasn't that bad. And Nepal is, like I said, now it's definitely one of the safest countries for people to visit,
Yeah.
including groups.
Yeah. And that happens everywhere, even in the US. There are spots that are safer than others. But yeah, I've never had concerns about traveling to Nepal. Even in Malawi, when there were some uprisings happening, they were really local uprisings in small villages. They didn't affect anything I did. And traveling to Jordan, it was still, although it was yellow, it was still very safe where we were. So as long as you have someone to take care of you, like Manoj and his team, you're in great hands, and that makes a big difference. I do want to go back a little bit just for fun because I love this part. You talked about your first exposure. One of your first exposures to Jane was through a book. My first was through an anthropology class in my undergraduate years, where we learned about Jane from a professor who was visiting from California. But Carrie Seaton says, I love the part of your story that includes exposure to an impactful book, and excited to see there is a SDG book club with a curated list of books that connects to the SDGs. She'll be sharing this with her librarians and teachers. So that's awesome, Carrie. I'm so excited that you're helping spread the word. Carrie, let us know where you're from. I'd love to know where you're from. So any other books or anything that you can think of right now, Manoj? I'm trying to rack my brains. Lucy's actually given some great ideas in the comments. So if you look at that, she has a great idea of an organization she's working with that deals with those types of things. So you might look at that too. But any books or anything you can think of about around that would be helpful for anyone?
I just not anything on the top of my mind.
Yeah, I couldn't either. She has Lucy mentioned the Charter for Compassion. That was the one that she was talking about, and the link for that is in there. And she just also did a search for members who are in Nepal in our global community. And we have quite a few who are working in our networking community with actionable innovations that are from Nepal. So that's really interesting as well. Looking at the clock, Manoj, and thinking, although we could stay here all day talking, going back to your schools for sustainable development goals, do you want to talk about some of the opportunities that are available through you?
Absolutely. So basically what we do is since it just happened to be that it was kind of launched around the time when COVID hit us. So the online courses, even though we highly try to focus on and recommend on-site trips, because it just does magic, like I said. There were limitations on that front, so we thought we'd make a very highly interactive online engagement possible. So we have virtual learning opportunities through different online courses. We have modules which are not highly regulated modules. We've kept pretty flexible, but also based on different demands. I see Maria in the audience here, Maria Manachero from American School of Doha. We've done some lecture series with them on conservation, where their students talk to some very renowned poacher turned conservationist. And then we also run seminars, workshops on site, as well as virtual learning. We are very flexible, because we know different schools have different requirements, curriculum based, like extracurricular CAS, for IBs, and so on and so forth. So we're very, we just want to help. We are there to serve different interests and different needs, as long as the values match. And on-site experiences, we have basically different, like anything that comes under the 17 sustainable development goals. What we do is basically we allow teachers, students to work together in picking their own subject of interest. It could be basically anything, like it could be health related, gender related, environment related, climate change related. It could be anything basically, or some like complex topics like environmental racism, like environmental injustice, and so on and so forth. And then what we do is we create actionable questions based on which we design modules. And then basically teachers and students, some parents, they love it as well. Many parents also like visit and take part in this. they could be part of it, and they can interact with the local people. We believe in perspective-based learning, where you just don't see things in the linearity. Basically, you just get to talk to all the stakeholders. All the stakeholders. Sometimes the views and ideas of these stakeholders can be conflicting, but then you get to be the judge of everything. Like you just basically incorporate everybody's perspective, 360-degree perspective, over one particular issue. So like you get to learn about the community, you get to learn about the issues, you get to learn about the interventions as well. So what are the interventions that have been brought so far once this issue was recognized as an issue, and what has that done? Has it done any good? Because there are many, like I said, like millions of dollars poured into something, and still the situation might not be far much better. Sometimes it can be worse even. And where did we fail? Sometimes some intervention just hits right on the spot, and then does magic. It makes a whole lot of difference. So what enables that? So students, teachers, parents alike, they get to learn about these things. And once and this is all online basically. Like this, we enable that to happen online through interactions and with all different stakeholders and experts included. Once they learn about that, then they get to see like, okay, what works, what doesn't work in that particular context, and then they can come up with their own intervention design. That is the project-based learning. That is the experience-based learning, because now they've kind of received all the background information and they're enabled that way. Then once they have like a intervention idea, we help them develop that idea. We validate those things through expert panel, through ourselves as a facilitator, and the community. At the end, the community has to validate the idea, and then we basically facilitate on-site experience. The groups can come, teachers can come, parents can come. So these are the services that we are providing. And what it does is not only for the schools and this and that. And many times, service learning trips in the old times. Let me project it in a good light. The incomers were seen as servers, and the local community would be seen as served. So there was like kind of discrepancy in terms of dignity. But we see it as a very dignified exchange of services. It does good to the local community. The local community people come as peers, as partners. So it's less pedagogical, but it's more pedagogical as well. It's like peer-to-peer learning as well. Like the outsiders, who come to be insiders, they bring newer perspectives, and then they also get to learn from the locals, their side of the stories, their perspectives, and what opportunities lie. Sometimes you cannot see those opportunities that you are actually sitting on, being always there. It needs outsiders' perspective. So it does magic, basically on both the fronts, and then bonds are created for lifetime, individual bonds, community bonds, institutional bonds. So yeah, we are here to make all that possible. That does good in a very dignified manner for everybody.
Yeah, and so that's so important that you respect those you're working with, and that it is often a mutual thing. And someone asked, I think, and I know that it's a question. What is some of these communities, knowing that they're rural, knowing that they're in a whole different lifestyle, what do they think of some of the modern issues, and what do they think of some of the modern technologies, and what are their hopes for their children? And yet you'll be amazed at how much they know and want things to be better for their children. When we were doing our work in Malawi, it was very evident. They wanted their kids to learn about technology. They wanted their kids to do these different things because they know that's the future for what they need to do to be successful if they're going out into the bigger world. For their lifestyle and for their work. So that's important. I did find out, though, I wanted to tell you this too. Carrie is from Northford, Connecticut, and she's a 3rd to 5th grade school librarian. And Ian is an upper school secondary English and social studies teacher in Norway. And you can put these types of issues and conversations into any curricular area and any grade level. Sometimes the kindergartners are the ones that are going to be the ones that will tell you to turn the lights off every time you leave a room, and go home and bug mom and dad about it. So don't ever think that they're too young. They can make an impact at any age. So I love that. I love that parents are invited. I love the idea of teacher groups going, or higher ed going as well, for internships. So there's lots of different opportunities. And the fact that so many ideas and thoughts that you can work with in this community in Nepal, in other areas besides just Bardia is, that you have this natural environment that's amazing. So whatever your curricular content is or your goals, your objectives, it can be customized to fit those as well, which is really important. And there's a lot, I know we've talked about the human animal conflict lately with the tigers and the elephants. Tell them the story really quickly, and then we're going to kind of have to start wrapping up with a couple more questions about how the drones are being used right now, Manoj.
Yeah, so this is what really excites me, the potential of the students that we talked about earlier. The projects, the slots that we create, for students to come up with interventions for each one of them, it has potential to be groundbreaking. One example is one of our school groups. After they got to know the layout of the community, the issues there, one of which is human wildlife conflict. Nepal has done so good with increasing the number of wildlife, basically just rehabilitating the number. That now the very poorest of the poor living in the marginal lands, they are they're at the serious loggerhead with the wildlife species terms of tigers. We had the serious rise in number of human tiger conflict related casualties as well. Human casualties, over 50 people that like from a very small area. Same issue with elephants, human wildlife, human elephant conflict. The local people have land and water, but then they can't grow anything. So these are like some chronic problems that we've had, and guess what? Like one school engages with 2 drones sent. Like these are like normal, readily available drones. And in one of our experiments, we found that drones do magic with chasing away elephants, because elephants and people live very closely. Their human settlements are in the pathway of elephant migration. And some elephants are a little cheeky, and like with their inquisitive curiosity, they just come towards like cropland and then find tastier, nutritious food for them, and they just basically finish entire year worth of crop in one night. And people have to protect it, and that's when the conflict happened. That's when the mishaps happen. That's when people actually lose life every year. Like from even this small little community that I know, at least 3 or 4 people lose their life. And with this little initiative, 2 drones was given to this community, where the community-based anti-poaching unit volunteers, they have rapid response team. And they basically get information about these incoming elephants, and they get deployed. These 2 little units of drones have basically enabled the local community to, in a very safe manner, remotely operated, even in the middle of night. You can just basically approach the elephants like 30 meters, and elephants will just go. These are elephants that are so used to adamant, even when they're poked with fire, sometimes they just, they won't buzz. But the buzzing sound of drones does something, like instinctive fear of the bees. That's what we have come up to, to a conclusion that must be the thing. And they can't see it because elephants literally cannot look up. And it has been literally practically saving lives. And can you imagine what it must do to the morale of the students? Like what they did. They knew that, and it's not a huge amount of resource they had to raise. It's basically pocket money of, a few students put together in form of one project. And that is this is a story worth telling in the major media, to instigate, and that is what we believe in. That is what we make possible here. And like I said, every single engagement could really, end up being a groundbreaking thing. And that is what excites me the most.
That's so exciting. I love that story. I love that one. I'm just going to ask you one quick question from Lucy, because we hadn't gotten to hers, but she wants to know if with climate change in Nepal, and is any type of education happening there? And then we need to wind up.
Well, climate change has a lot of impact in Nepal. Nepal, has the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest. From that to 68 meters, which is almost sea level, in the aerial span of 150 kilometers. That basically means you can imagine one of the highest diversity in micro habitat, microclimate, ethnically as well. We're one of the most diverse countries given the size of the country. The diversity is really high. which means everything is in jeopardy. Everything is in a kind of danger of being hit by the impact. The glaciers are melting, like visibly, like from what I remember, how the snow peaks used to be that you could easily see from Kathmandu even 15 years ago. Now, like there's a starkly, like different difference, that you can see. You don't even need like a sophisticated science to absorb that. And the flooding, if basically Nepal is terai land, which is plain, and then hills, and then mountains, higher mountains. So in all these three layers, you see, situations just very drastically changing. And there aren't. There are many long-term studies going on. There are many, celebrated institutions that are working, and also many universities send, teams and postdoc candidates for research, because Nepal is such a ideal platform for climate change studies. And that is something that we're trying to incorporate with ours as well, because the impact is everywhere, very clearly, very visibly. Impact is everywhere, in the form of floods, in the form of erosion, in the form of forest fires. There are upper hill communities that have never ever seen anything like mosquitoes or forest fires, and now they're basically a seasonal thing. So and what needs to be documented as well. And Nepal it doesn't do very good in documenting. So Nepal, that also makes Nepal like a heaven for climate change studies. But we need to do a lot more better in terms of using this this crisis created opportunity for us to be able to read the impact of climate change that our part of the world is going through.
And we all need to do better, Manoj. It's not just you in Nepal. And so I'm just going to kind of end everything. First of all, thank you so much for your time, Manoj. I know how busy you are. He was recently moved, and then he's traveling and doing so much work with this organization. We appreciate your time so much, and your passion. If you've never met anybody with a true passion coming from his heart, Manoj is your guy, because this starts with his passion. And yes, it's an organization, and yes, it's a business of sorts, but it really is truly his heart that's doing this. It's his passion. And I will say that, thank you, Maria. She said she's traveled to Nepal with student groups twice, and she says it's a safe and wonderful experience. So what I challenge you with, or what we all challenge you with, is to think about this, to share the presentation with your friends and colleagues. Try to get them interested in the Sustainable Development Goals and getting your kids involved to make a difference. It'll be one of the most rewarding things you've ever done. And the kids will be so excited to engage with that student agency. So some great words of inspiration, Manoj. We have an upcoming conversation about neurodiversity in education. This is a topic that is really interesting, and just brain development that has really kind of spurred my thoughts a lot lately. So look for that. That's coming up on Friday, October. I think that's 18th. I can read it there. I can't read very well, but you can look in August at 1:00 Central with Dr. Adam Layler. So look at that one coming up. Don't forget about our AI Impacts at Summit, which is artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. That's coming up in August, on August 7th. Lucy's put the discount code in the chat for you, so make sure you see that. Because we have an amazing group of panelists talking about AI in education and the generative ChatGPT and all those things that are happening. So be sure and look at that. And just go out there and make a difference when you can. Do what you can in your part of the world. August 18th. Thank you, Lucy. I need I'm getting my glasses checked this week, actually, Lucy. So there you go. I have my eye doctor appointment. But thank you so much for starting your Mondays off with us, or ending your Monday, wherever you are with us. We appreciate you joining us. Reach out to myself, Lucy, and Manoj if you want to learn more, if you want to be in contact with Manoj. We're happy to do that. Super excited you were here, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have the wonderful rest of your day or evening. Take care.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.